Hello, and welcome back to week 2 of summer school. This week we're going to talk about figurative language and how we can include it into our stories, as well as maybe some times that you might experience it within movies or TV shows, or also some types of literature that you read. All right, so today we're going to talk about figurative language. So we're going to start with personification. Personification is when you give an inanimate object or any non-human objects or creatures human qualities. So when I say qualities, I mean actions or describing them in any way, shape, or form. So that could be a phone, it could be something outside, or your dog. Anything can be personified as long as it's not a human. So let's look at this example. So the trees were waving at me as we drove home. So the trees were waving. While you might think that, yes, the branches move, but that's just it. They're just moving. They're not actually waving at you like a human would. All right, so black bears are common in this area, and this one I saw just walked right up to our car. So bears walking, yes, they can like stroll, and you might actually just consider what they're doing walking anyway. However, in this example, the bears are walking is personifying what the bears are doing. All right, so then the next one is my phone was yelling at me this morning as I missed the first 2 alarms. So phone and yelling would be personifying the phone because it's not actually yelling at you, it's just ringing, and therefore you personified it. All right, next up we have an onomatopoeia. That one's a mouthful. An onomatopoeia is defined as a word which imitates the natural sounds of things. So the most frequent example I think would be this one, the fireworks and pow. So we watched from a distance as the fireworks made a loud declaration in the sky, pow. So I feel like this one's pretty common when I think about onomatopoeias because you might see it more in like comic books. So this other one to the left is as I braked to avoid the car in front, my tires squealed in retaliation. So car squealed, and when you think about that sound, like the tire squealed in front of you, and that would be the sound of it. So it's making that sound. The next one over here on the right is outside I could hear the leaves rustling to the sound of the pending storm. So I don't know if you can picture this, but outside, sometimes when it's about to storm or it's a little windy, you can hear the leaves shuffling around, and that sound would be rustling, and that would be an onomatopoeia. Next up, we have an oxymoron. Oxymoron is a figure of speech in which 2 opposite ideas are joined to create an effect. So the common oxymoron phrase is a combination of an adjective preceded by a noun with a contrasting meaning. So living, death. So living would mean something is alive, but then death is obviously when something is not alive anymore. So 2 opposite meanings, living is the adjective and death would be the noun in that example. So I didn't want to just specify 1 or 2 examples. There's so many out there. So in this list, you can read through them if you want, but there are so many different things like random order, because random implies that it's not in a specific order, but then order implies that it is in a specific order. Let's see, Walking Dead. So kind of like the TV show name, walking would imply that it's alive and it's moving, but then dead means that it is no longer living. Let's look over here on the left. So definitely, maybe. So definitely usually implies that it's for sure going to happen, and then maybe is like, maybe not. Or awful, or amazingly awful. So amazingly is usually something that you would align with something that's good, but then awful's paired with it, which kind of implies that it's not so great. Farewell reception. Sorry that these kind of got slid apart. But farewell usually means that you're saying goodbye, but reception usually means you're welcoming that person or that thing back in. Only choice. Only means that you have one, and choice usually implies that there's several different options out there. So take a look through this list. Again, this is not the only list of oxymorons out there, but it is kind of important to know that sometimes you're throwing things out there that can be misleading. Hyperbole is next. A hyperbole is an exaggeration of ideas for the sake of emphasis. I use a hyperbole all the time, but here are a couple examples. So, my book bag weighs a ton. I don't know if you guys know how much a ton is, but it is not something that I could actually carry. But by saying this, I'm exaggerating how much my book bag actually weighs. And then this next one, I've told you a million times to put the dishes away. I'm sure you've heard this from your parents before. They probably didn't actually tell you a million times, but they're saying that for the exaggeration of the effect. And then this last one, I feel like I say often, I'm so hungry I could eat a horse. I'm sure if you were in a food eating contest and you ate regularly, maybe you could get close to it, but no average person could really eat a horse, which would be an exaggeration. All right, this is probably one of my favorites, but it is a pun. This is a play on words in which a humorous effect is produced by using a word that suggests two or more meanings, or by exploiting similar words having different meanings. So let's look at some of these examples. I felt like they went best with pictures, so let me do some explaining. So the duck said to the bartender, "Put it on my bill." So in this one, a bill also refers to money or his nose, because a duck's part right here is known as their bill. Next one, why are teddy bears never hungry? They are always stuffed. So teddy bears in this example, like you can see right here, that this teddy bear is actually stuffed full of something, but they're implying that he is stuffed with food at the moment. And then appendix. So the book says to the other book, "You look much thinner," and he responds with, "Thanks, I had my appendix removed." So an appendix in a book can be found usually at the end. So then it can also be part of a human that they can actually get removed too. So it has two meanings there. Next, we have a flashback. So a flashback is a scene in a movie or novel or anything like that that is set in a time earlier than the main story. So, for example, when a soldier is telling a story of their life after they have come back from the war. So that's when they are thinking back to that moment in time. Or the next one in the movie Up, the old man has a flashback to when he met and married his wife. So that was before the present timeline in the story. Or if you're thinking of the movie Forrest Gump is a series of flashbacks. So Forrest meets new people and then he shares stories from earlier on in his life. Next, we have foreshadowing. So foreshadowing is a literary device in which the writer gives an advance hint of what is going to come later in the story. I always love to share the horror film example. If you've ever seen the movies Jaws, you would know. It's when you hear the music like dun-na, dun-na, and it just keeps getting faster and faster. You know that Jaws is nearby. So sometimes in horror films you can hear like that suspenseful music to let you know that something's about to happen. This example is more something that you would see when it's written. So the evening was still. Suddenly a cool breeze started blowing and made a windy night. So this would foreshadow a thunderstorm or something else coming later. Other hints, sometimes when a character mentions something about their backstory that could lead to something that will be told later in the story. So you can often witness this after you watch a movie or read a book one time through and then you reread it. You pick up on the author trying to imply something that's going to be important to know later in the book or movie. All right, so that is it for my rundown of figurative language. This is not all of the terms of figurative language, but these are just important ones that I want you to practice this week.